Alright, so I finished off that view and I wanted to give you a follow up on how this current one works. This is fairly interesting. I kind of like the way this goes. The flow of it would be the user selects an item. Because of the click event, I'm going to populate that next list, that create the items in that next list, and then through those rules, how I have them in sequence, I'm going to transfer that item to that data label item, and then I'm going to list the items over here. I'm going to fire that get list event and refresh it as the form as the form is live. So let's see how this one works. And then I'll get back into the control. I'll show you a little bit deeper of the control of the radio button so that you can understand like what I'm kind of doing there. So when this one runs, I'm populating this control with that question set 1. If I click on something, it's going to fire everything kind of in sequence. It's going to populate the next items for the question. There's a possibility of this is a data label. You could tie these two together. So this question could be just a regular data label that you could say question 1, question 2 instead of this question set may be a little misleading. Somebody might not really understand what that is. So I'm populating that list with those items, and because I dropped in the name, the format of the name item, the current username, is what we see here is the domain / username, and then if I go to the list itself, you can see I'm starting to populate the question number. This came from that static data label, and then the question they selected, what user was logged in. And then secondary question fires. So I only set up 2. This is where this one becomes a little tricky, as in I only set up 2 questions, so the data label is not going to progress in the next one. This data label has a possibility of being increased. I could have put an expression on it that just said add 1 to it, and that may have been better. So I populated that with those 2. I could show you that real quick on the view level. So like I said before, I like to control everything from the view level. It allows you to a tighter container. So let's say for here, instead of that transfer rule, I could have came over and said an expression. Let's see. I could say something like put an operator in of add 1 to like a mathematical, or I'm sorry, it's an operator. So I'm going to throw in the control. Hopefully I don't spend too much time on this because I want to do the other one. So this is a possibility of adding 1 to that, or if we put a parameter in, I can add 1 to it and populate into the data label. I'm not going to dig too deep into that, but I did want to show you this. So if you highlight the radio button control, this is how I set it up. If I hit the ellipsis on the data source, by default, it's going to throw in something silly for the value. It's going to say question and then display question. You have complete control over this. You know, you can click in here, remove that, and then you could drag and drop a new item in. The value that I'm shooting for, that I want to populate it with, is the question set. And so the interesting part about this is when I throw that rule in that says populate the control with something, that's where you have the control of listing the items that you want. So this, like I said before, this rule is thrown in by default. When I configure it, there's nothing in here. So if I just ran it, it would show me all the list items. But like any good list, I mean, the get list is a great method because you can come in here and I could say, I want to see question set one. I want to see, you know, you could type in a particular question. You can filter in those results that you want in there. So I said it's basically doing a get list method, and I'm pulling in anything that says question set one, and I tied those two through that list. I said I wanted those two questions. I could add more if I wanted to, but so I just wanted to kind of show you that the data source on this, on the control. Another thing I was thinking that might be a possibility here is you can, if I manipulate the view here, and let's say I create more area, and I do another control. And another possibility that I was thinking here too is that you could throw a checklist. You could throw all your questions in for simplicity. Or I'm sorry, not checklist. Delete. I'm going to do a radio button. So I could click on this and I could configure the data source, and I could put static values in. Question 1, question 2, question 3. So I can hide this by default. I could say what I like to do is I like to hide certain things. If you want values to be, sometimes I'll play around with data labels if I need to transfer around data and I don't really want the user to see it. I'll enable a data label, and data labels are great for you in the beginning, that you can actually throw a bunch of data labels down. You could transfer data and you can actually see when you select something what's going on there. But so I can make that, I can hide it by default, and I could throw multiple down. So if I said this was radio button list 1, and then throw like another one down, also hide it, radio button list 2, or you can call it question 2, question set 2, and I'm going to hide this one as well. Put some data in. So what I could do, I think you were trying to do this in the checkbox list, but if this is selected, you can hide question set 1, and then so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide and I'm going to show a control. I'm going to hide a control. I'm going to throw a couple of those in because I'm not sure how many I need. I think I need a couple. I'm also going to show a control. So this will be in sequence. This one might get a little tricky because everything will fire at once. You might have to put like an if statement in, but so let's say if it's changed, I want to hide the current control. So the current one that we were looking at was just called the tile radio button list. I want to then show radio button list 1. So I'm going to get rid of these because this is going to take some recursive type logic. So if I finish this off and I run it and I select it, it's going to bring up that secondary question. The way it's kind of jogging around can be controlled as well through by stacking all the controls into the same cell. So I had it, you can, and you could kind of play around with that as in, if you wanted to kind of do that type of function, you can, you know, put it in another table. But if you want to hide and display and play with that, you put everything in the same cell. It will generally almost look like how we were doing it before, where like I click on this, and it'll look kind of seamless, as in, um, it looks like something. It's you could see the transition, but it's there's not too much jarring. It kind of smoothly transitions into that next item there. But I wanted to show you the two things I was thinking about for this. But and that's it. So I'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Let me know if you have any questions.